Hello, everyone, and welcome to the OCNJ Local, your podcast for everything happening here in America's greatest family resort. We're your host, Dominic Dougherty and Drew Fasy.
And we are your local guys.
Still on fire with the finger drill. It's almost like I've done this before. So we're back with another installment of the 2026 election series. Today, we're moving into the council candidates. Joining us today is current city councilman Sean Barnes.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks for being on, Sean.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. So this will be just like our mayoral candidates. Drew's going to ask them the same series of questions. They'll have the same amount of time to answer. Drew and I will, try as best we can to refrain from our typical banter. We can only do so much here because we are human. And we're going to do the best we're not going to do the best. We are going to remain as unbiased as possible. So, Drew, with that said, I'll turn it over to you, and I'll sit here and keep some time.
Okay. So, Sean, the first three questions are just trying to get warmed up. They're yes or no answers, and then we'll get into the longer questions. Okay. All right.
The dissertation questions, if you will.
Yeah. Should the city implement a residents-only parking permit system for the downtown streets during the summer?
No.
Okay. Number two, jitney service across the 9th Street Bridge.
Perhaps.
Okay. Question three. Some residents and visitors think that Ocean City is losing a competitive opportunity to places like Summers Point and Margate by not offering alcohol consumption at publicly accessed restaurants. So BYOB in Ocean City, yes or no?
Well, there kind of is. It's not a yes or no question. There kind of is already. They got the, if you're a part of a private club. I mean, I'm not for BYOB necessarily for across the board, but if they have these permits like the Flanders does, or you can get a permit for the Flanders and the yacht club and stuff like that, but not right now. I don't see a real upside to having BYOB across the board.
Yeah, that's what the question was: publicly accessed restaurants as opposed to clubs.
Also, Flanders is not publicly. I mean, that's not closed, right? Or the yacht club, I guess.
They're parties or they're private functions.
Right. So if you're talking about just off every restaurant on the island having BYOB, I would be opposed to that right now unless I saw some really compelling evidence that makes sense.
Okay. All right. So now we'll get into a little bit longer questions, and you'll have 2 minutes to answer.
Okay.
Right? Okay. First one. The 3% occupancy tax on short-term rentals booked through platforms like Airbnb and VRBO went into effect in Ocean City in 2025. However, rentals through traditional real estate brokerages remain exempt. Critics say this is unfair to tech-savvy owners, while supporters say it protects local agencies. Do you support this agent exemption, or do you believe all rentals should be taxed equally to maximize the city's revenue?
So when that was brought before council, as you may know, right now the statute is such that the statute that allows us to charge an occupancy tax only addresses the transient market space and hotel space. It does not. That statute does not address the realtor based space. And arguably it's probably because the realtors have, a strong lobby up in Trenton. But right now, the way the statute's written, what was presented to us is the realtor space does not come into play, nor does the owner-occupied space or the direct rentals to the owner. But my concerns about the occupancy tax in general was the way it was implemented. It was only I would rather have seen a phased-in program, maybe start out at 1%. And the statute is written for hotels and the transient space. Matter of fact, it started out, I believe it was back in 2018, when the statute was written up in Trenton, that they called it the hotel tax. And then a year or so later, the hotel folks said, hey, this isn't fair. You should be charging the transient market space. So they added that. So my opposition to it in the last fall when it was brought in front of us was that, number one, I didn't think it was fair. If the tax is supposed to be for hotels and transient market space, I would have rather have seen something that was spread. I wanted to see that equitable and across the board. But I also wanted to see something that was phased in slower, maybe start out at 1%, then 2%, then 3%. Right now, that's a budget line item, that the revenue that we generate from that. And because perhaps the perceived disparity with that, the way it's laid out right now, I'm concerned about the strength of that revenue stream. Is that revenue stream going to stay solid going forward? If we wanted to maximize our revenues, let's hit everybody that it addresses. And again, the realtor-based space never really came into play.
Okay.
Right on time. Right on time.
Question number
Good
2.
job.
During the last 2 summers, the surge in e-bikes has created a significant safety conflict. Many towns are moving toward outright bans on the boards during peak hours, while others are creating dedicated slow lanes. As a council member, would you support stricter enforcement and speed governors for e-bikes, or is it time to consider banning motorized cycles on the boardwalk entirely during the summer season?
Well, I'm not a proponent of banning them altogether on the boardwalk. And my primary concern with that is the senior citizens. Many senior citizens rely on them to get up to the boardwalk, and obviously we want to make the boardwalk as accessible as possible. Whether they could put the governors on the e-bikes themselves, that's the first I've heard that recommendation. That's kind of interesting. But slow lanes, I think, possibility of slow lanes like we have Surreys and everything, there used to be lanes just for the Surreys. I think they changed that, but I would like to see some type, to the extent possible, more regulations up there on the boardwalk. And I know that the police chief and everybody have done a great job up there, and it is a little bit challenging. But I think a slow lane would be really beneficial. Keep them over there, and of course they got to adhere to the rest of the rules that go along with the new legislation that came out of Trenton. I think it was last month or so, or maybe it was in January. But right now, the police department is in this educational mode where they're stopping the people that are riding the bikes incorrectly and educating them on the proper procedures. Got to go slow. You got to wear a helmet. You got to have insurance and all that stuff. I think that's the right tack to take right now versus anything too dramatic. Because even like with the banning them on the boardwalk, at the very first glance, I thought, yeah, that might make sense. It's boardwalk is not made for a real fast bike or a motorcycle, but then we got talking to the senior citizens. I'm like, well, that's true too. We want to make sure that boardwalk's really accessible to everybody. So it's something we're going to keep on exploring. It was not an easy answer that we all thought it might be in the beginning, but it's definitely something that we have to address for the safety of everybody that goes up there.
Okay. Question number 3. The 2025-26 municipal budget introduced a 7.04 tax rate increase, bringing the total tax hike over the last 3 years to roughly 17%. Residents are feeling the squeeze. If elected, is there any one specific line item, project, or program in the current budget that you would target for a reduction to ensure we don't see another 7% increase in 2027?
So there's no one item that I would recommend for deduction right now. And everybody is concerned about this. You're correct. I mean, Ocean City still has a great tax rate, but 2 or 3 years from now, we're probably going to have a reval. And that has people concerned. Now, my background is in valuation and appeals and real estate and land use in general. And the reval doesn't concern me because all it does is it levels out the taxes. In New Jersey, we have what we call ad valorem taxation, which means according to value. But what will drive up our taxes is when the budget's too high, an improper budget. So I personally, I do look at every single line item, and then I have to make the decision in talking to residents. What's important to everybody? Well, safety is really important. The fire department and the police department are critically important, and that's been some high ticket items for a while, especially with the capital plan that addresses those two buildings. But I think, right now, there's nothing in the budget that really jumps out at me that I think we have to get rid of. But I do want to make sure that we watch over our employee base, the employment costs, the legacy costs, and the insurance and everything. Insurance is probably the primary driver, well, it is the primary driver of those increases, health insurance for the employee base. So that's one item that we can kind of control. We have a hiring freeze right now. We can kind of control that going forward. We're going to keep the police and the fire, departments where they are, and just make sure there's no waste, And I also talked about that revenue strength of the revenue stream, including that occupancy tax. The revenue streams that we have right now are pretty solid. I just want to keep an eye on them to make sure that we maintain those streams.
Another right on the money.
Okay, question number 4. Our downtown is thriving, but we still see a ghost town effect from November to March. Some residents have suggested offering tax incentives or rebates for businesses that commit to staying open at least 5 days a week year-round until a later time of day, say 7 p.m. Would you support using municipal funds to subsidize year-round business operations, or should the market dictate when shops open and close?
That's a really good question. So I would rather see the market drive business. And that's in general, whether it's real estate prices or the cost of goods or how long stores stay open. Whatever we can do as a municipality to bring people to Ocean City in the weekends during the shoulder season and during the winter as well, to help the boardwalk merchants in the downtown area thrive. Obviously, the boardwalk, most of those folks are going to be closed in the winter. But even the last term around, when I ran 2 years ago, that keeping year-round rate operations in the island is really important to me. I like to be able to walk downtown to the hardware store, stuff like that. Obviously, a supermarket and everything. But I'd be very hesitant to have city funds go towards any type of rebate, because that's all taxpayers' money. And, are the taxpayers that are not interested in shopping at a given store be having their tax dollars used towards supporting those businesses? I think most people on the island really do want to see year-round operations. And so as a council person, I'll do whatever I can to make that happen. But I just got to be real careful about using taxpayer money inappropriately. Okay.
You said that was a good question, and it was a good question, but that wasn't one of our questions.
Give credit where credit is due.
Yeah. Okay, question number 5. If there was a project presented by the owner of 600 Boardwalk that included public space, amusements, retail, ample parking, and a hotel with a number of stories that was considered a compromise from the original concept presented, could you support such a project?
Yes. Now, the caveat being, I'm not real sure if I understand the number of stories, but matter of fact, I just left the subcommittee meeting right before this. I'm on that subcommittee that we've been talking about that for 6 months or so. But I think a mixed-use project at that location that includes some type of hotel space that would conform to the neighborhood. It doesn't. It's height appropriate, like you said. You hit all the hot button items: the parking, the traffic patterns, the density. I would support. Matter of fact, I've said this publicly in our council meetings, even from the very first time we addressed this back in August as a council. I think that's probably the highest and best use of that property, to have some mixed use property up there that also includes some type of lodging maybe in the back. And we have to take into consideration all the neighbors that live there, the people who live in the Park Plaza neighborhood, and also the frontage of the boardwalk. The frontage of the boardwalk, it traditionally has been, it gives us our character in Ocean City, and I want to see that maintained. But in the same token, I'm for change. I like to see things, if things don't change, they stagnate and they die, right? So I know the future is going to, of our boardwalk, we probably need a little facelift up there. And that's a beautiful property. It's 300 feet by 300 feet, a lot of opportunity there. You can get really creative and do something really nice that everybody could buy into, I think, the residents in that neighborhood as well as around the whole island. And hopefully it's something that brings people, whether if it included some type of convention space or there's a lot of really good ideas that have come across the table. I surf, and one of them was a surf park, even though we got the Atlantic Ocean right there. But I think that wouldn't be very cost effective. But to answer your question, that's kind of what we've been discussing. Like, hey, what's really going to work up there that would be good for the whole city of Ocean City? Not just one stakeholder or a small group of stakeholders. Something that's going to help Ocean City's boardwalk thrive and give us a reason as locals to go up there and get maybe if there's a nice restaurant in the background or something. All those uses are really viable, I think could be viable, but I want to see I think for the next steps forward, we need to see some real plans and then including the financial feasibility of any project, because whatever gets built there, we want to make sure that it survives long term. We don't want a vacant building up there.
Okay. And final question, what character trait or experience makes you most qualified for this position?
Experience-wise, I would have to relate on my professional career. I've been in land use and I work for an affordable housing company across the country. My professional career has been in land use, finance, and budgeting. So all these tools are very helpful as a council person. I think if anybody watches the council meetings over the last couple of years, my track record is pretty good. I really strive to be a voice of reason and common sense. I try not to let the emotions of any given topic come into play too much, including 600 Boardwalk. But I'm a fact-driven guy, and I'm very open when I come back with answers or my opinions on certain items that we vote on. I'm very cognizant of the fact that people want to know why I voted on certain things. So I try to stress that point that it's a very open, honest, and fact-driven process that I adhere to, and I think that's what the people want to see. Even over these last few months, when things have been kind of contentious, the feedback I get from the residents and the voters is like, "Hey, I was on the other side of the table on that, but I get where you're coming from," and they appreciate my common sense and open approach to it. So I think that helps me long term.
Okay, that was it, Dom, on the questions.
Yeah. So now we're going to turn it over to you. You'll have 2 minutes to kind of wrap everything up and let the voters know, why Sean Barnes should continue to be a councilman.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you guys for hosting. This is really cool. So I'm really excited to running again for office. I just finishing up 2 years on council. It's my first run around in politics, and I wasn't really sure how I was going to like it, but I do really like it. It's challenging. I've also had the opportunity I'm currently on the planning board as a council liaison to the planning board. So that obviously development is redevelopment is one of the bigger topics on our island. So my exposure to the issues that we've addressed over the last 2 years has been very enlightening, and I really appreciate having had this opportunity for the past 2 years. And I want to continue that. I mean, I was born and raised in this town. I absolutely love Ocean City. I love everything about it. We're really blessed to live here. But we do have some real challenges going forward, and I want to maintain what I call our shore way of life. We live almost in a bubble. Sometimes I travel quite a little bit for work, and when I see other places, like, man, we really live in the right place. And when I come back over that bridge in Ocean City, after being away for a little while, like, this is the place to be. And I think most people that live here, that's what we want. We love this lifestyle. We are truly blessed. So I really welcome the opportunity to keep going forward. And I welcome the opportunity for people to reach out to me. My phone, the voicemail on my phone is typically always backed up because it's hard to get to the reply, but people do know that I do reply to their inquiries. And I want to keep that going forward. be an active member of this community that I love so much. And people did it before me, and I just want to keep moving forward as a great town. And I think as a council person, I'll be best served to do that. My professional career has really been beneficial to what I do. Even like you mentioned, the budgeting, I look at budgets all day long and financial projections. And so it bodes well to my job as a council person. I've been a very independent voice on council, and that's really, really important to me. Whatever the issue is, I'm not going to be taking sides. I'm just looking at the issues and coming up with a fact-driven, common sense approach to any challenges that we may have as a community, and I hope to keep doing that.
All right. Well, thank you. You picked an interesting time to enter politics in Ocean City, so kudos for you, and thank you for being willing to sit down and do it again. So
my pleasure.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. This has been the OCNJ Local, your podcast for everything happening here in America's greatest family resort. Peace.
Thank you, guys.